Hey everyone, it's JT from Worky Daily. How you doing? Today is Tuesday and the kickoff of Recruiter Table Talk. And I'm really excited to have Peter Weddle here. Peter, do I call you the founder of TA Tech? Is that an appropriate title?
Yes, I'm the guilty guy.
You are the guilty guy. And you're actually going to be hosting a conference next week in New York City. I know you host a lot of them and we'll talk about that. But this one specifically is about leadership in all that we're doing. And the reason I wanted to have you on was to talk about the fact that I'm seeing a lot of recruiters and organizations doing things that just aren't working anymore. They're still doing the stuff they were doing pre-COVID and during COVID. And we both know that a lot of that stuff just isn't flying anymore. So I was hoping to spend some time today kind of picking your brain and hearing, of course, a lot more about what kinds of things you'll be addressing at next week's conference. So why don't we start by just can you just give us an overview of TA Tech, what prompted you to start this whole program, and fast forward to today and what it does for its customers?
Absolutely. So way back in the early 90s, so that'll date me a little bit, I bought a company called Job Bank USA, which was pre-internet, but arguably one of the largest in the country to use computers to match people in jobs. I sold that 5 years later, and I took a job with the Wall Street Journal writing a named column about this new thing called the internet, and in particular, the employment space. So I got to take a look at, all of the entrepreneurs that created what we know today as the online talent acquisition industry. And by 2007, it just seemed to me that the industry had matured enough that it needed a trade association. It needed a place that would establish standards and best practices, that would be a place where employers could interact with the companies that were developing all these high technology products, and have a voice, be better heard, and so that their needs were better met as they tried to recruit for their organizations. So I founded TA Tech in 2007, and here we are 15 years later, hopefully filling that goal.
And so much has happened in that time. It's funny. I started my company online in 2008, and we've watched a lot of this. I always thought, being in recruiting and staffing, that the technology would be faster than it is. I'm not to criticize our industry, but I feel like it's been a little slow to build the right technology, adopt the right technologies. We've had a lot of great iterations of technology, but I feel like what we need right now is even more innovation and disruption in the space. So what are you seeing? Because you get your hands on the pulse with this. I think part of the upside of having TA Tech is that companies are coming to you all the time and saying, hey, we're the newest, we're the hottest, we're the greatest. What are some of the trends you're seeing with regards to this?
Well, I think, it's a little bit of what's old and a little bit of what's new. I mean, what's old is that employers still, by and large, rely on job boards and online recruitment advertising to source their talent. And that's fine. They play a vital role. But increasingly, we're seeing that this job market is unlike any that we've ever seen. And I don't think that's hyperbole. And it's different because we're really in a zero-sum situation. I mean, if you take a look at the Federal Reserve, for example, they define full employment as an unemployment rate of between 5.0 and 5.1%. Well, we're at 3.7%. So, we're at full employment. And I think I saw in something that you wrote recently, the Department of Labor's JOLT report reveals that there are 2 job openings for every job seeker right now. So what we have is a labor market that, for the first time, I think, since the U.S. was founded, we just don't have enough talent to go around, which means that all of the tools, all of the technology, all of the strategies, all of the best practices that we've been able to use before this point in time no longer work, no longer apply.
So let me hit you with something, though, because yes, there are 2 jobs for every 1 person. But as I've been saying to people, there's a reason 47 million people quit their jobs in the last year and a half. They left jobs they don't want, that nobody wants in theory. And now everybody wants the same job. So what I'm seeing on the job seeker side is people coming to me and saying, why is it so hard for me to get a job? And you said something really interesting. We talked about the word talent. I think talent is different than bodies or human beings. We have a real talent issue right now going on. And at the same time, I have all these people that want a job and are telling me I applied to 100 jobs online. I didn't hear back from any of them. So the thing that I see is the candidate experience is hyper frustrated right now as they're trying to do the things they were always told to do because the employers are still using the tools they always used to use. And so for me, I get really concerned about how broken this appears and the level of frustration, I think, on both sides that's happening.
Yeah, I think that's true. I've written a whole book about talent, and I think that talent is hugely misunderstood. We think of talent as something that, America's Got Talent, people, something that movie stars and athletes have and so forth. At the end of the day, talent is a universal attribute. It's something that all humans are born with. It's like our opposable thumb. The problem is that our educational system doesn't help men and women understand what their talent is. We teach them a bunch of skills, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's something that they're really good at or will enjoy doing, be engaged with. So, I think that puts a lot of working men and women at a disadvantage. Yeah, they want to get employed. Yeah, they may even be qualified for a job. But from a recruiter's perspective, they aren't certain that this is a person who will be truly engaged with the mission of the organization. Mm-hmm. So, it's unfair, but I think it's a reality that a lot of folks who think that they're applying for a job that fits their talent are actually applying for a job where they might have the skills, but has nothing to do with their talent whatsoever.
Right. Right. And I think that's a real challenge. So let me stop here and welcome everybody. Lots of people jumping on today. If you have questions for Peter today, please make sure to pop them in the chat and I will pose them to him. We're talking about TA Tech's Leadership Summit on technology and the candidate experience. It's happening September 28th. So that's next week, folks. I've actually popped the link in the chat. I'm going to pop the link in the chat again so that you can sign up and be there. Peter, what this conference specifically, what's it going to address? What are some of the highlights of things that people are going to hear and learn at this piece?
Well, the basic premise is that the candidate experience is no longer a differentiator. It's table stakes. So if you're an employer, you have to be thinking about, and to the best extent that you can, optimizing the candidate experience. The best way, in our view, to really turn that table stakes into a competitive advantage is with technology. So what we want to do is we want to explore what works, what doesn't, what are best practices, what are the options that you have, to choose from, and what can you learn from use cases from your peers in the recruiting industry or the recruiting profession about how best to acquire, implement, and use technology effectively to transform that candidate experience into a true competitive advantage.
Yeah. So like you said, you've been around from the beginning. You've watched the technology evolve. What are one or two pieces of technology that you think are getting more widely adopted by businesses today in recruiting that have benefited or moved us forward? We had job boards when they started, but beyond that, what are some of the things that you see that are working really well?
I think programmatic ad buying has transformed recruitment advertising. Historically, we've had to rely on the experience of individual recruiters to know where best to place jobs. And, sometimes, there are 150,000 plus job boards and they come and go at warp speed. So it's just really tough to know where best to place your job advertisements. Programmatic ad buying basically uses computers to decide which of those job boards would probably provide the best candidate flow for a specific opening at the lowest cost. And it has really transformed the effectiveness of online recruitment advertising. It's not for everyone. Unfortunately, I think it's tough for small and mid-sized businesses to take advantage of the technology, but certainly for enterprise level employers, it's a real boon.
And what do you think, got them to adopt it? Because there's an expense associated with it. And the first time you're adopting something like programmatic advertising, it's unproven to you. You're not sure you're going to see the ROI. What do you think was the tipping point that got everybody on board?
I think it was partly driven by the fact that companies were posting jobs and seeing a trickle of applications, and they needed to get their job in front of more of the right qualified applicants, and they were casting about for a way to do that. And they can prove the ROI if they implement the technology effectively. They can fill positions they've never been able to fill before. They can fill them more quickly, and that immediately translates into bottom line savings.
Right. So that addresses enterprise, bigger businesses, bigger budgets, more formalized recruiting structure. What about the small businesses, the SMBs? Are you seeing any tech there that's done particularly well?
Yeah, I think I'm a real fan of conversational AI. And again, you've largely seen that deployed in big companies, but increasingly you will see that used by small and mid-sized businesses. It's not cost prohibitive, and it can really free up the small and mid-sized business to their smaller recruiting teams to really focus on what they do best, because all of those questions and all of those communications that candidates want with an organization, that a good conversational AI product can take care of that for you, and they can make the candidate experience that much more engaging, because questions are answered, communications are delivered, and then when a person qualifies for a particular opening, then the recruiter can do what he or she does best.
Interesting. So we have a question from Dominique, and it's a really interesting one about where the tech might be headed. Dominique says, I'm visually impaired individual. I've been visually impaired for 6 years. I'm having the hardest time being employed with corporations due to not having the accessibility for people with visual impairment. How do we involve the blind community when it comes to these kinds of thinking and ideas? And I'm curious, are you seeing any tech in the space that's really supporting diversity in terms of disability, specifically something like visual or hearing impaired?
There is an organization called Direct Employers, which is an association of about 1,000 enterprise level employers, and they focus a lot of time and attention on how best to engage people who are dealing with disabilities. And they obviously have to worry about compliance, but more so as I look at the kinds of content that they provide to their membership, what they focus on at their conferences, those are organizations that really have already made a commitment to reaching out to the visually or hearing impaired, reaching out to people with just a whole host of challenges that they're facing. So I think the best advice I could give you, Dominic, is to visit directemployers.org, and take a look at some of the employers in their organization, and then visit their websites and see how you're treated, because I suspect you will find that you have a better experience on those sites.
Amazing. That's so good to know. Okay, so let's talk about technology as it relates to salary. Rosie is saying salary expectations are changing. As recruiters, we have less experienced candidates working with less complex work, expecting higher salaries. And it's changing how the competitiveness of the market. We've got all this talk about the need for salary transparency. We've heard about Google now requiring it, Indeed now getting salaries listed. What do you think? How do you think this will be addressed from a tech standpoint in terms of getting not only salary transparency out there, but making sure that salaries align with the shifts in the market? We've got up times and down times. I think some companies are really concerned about overpaying for talent right now, only to, have overpriced staff later on. So thoughts on that?
I don't know that that's a tech problem so much as it is a strategy and policy challenge. I'm an old partner in the Hay Group, the compensation and benefits consultancy, and it's a real challenging time because there is that demand for higher compensation in the external marketplace. But even as you meet that demand in order to stay competitive, you've got to worry about internal equity because you've got all these other people who may be doing equivalent jobs who are falling further and further behind the market, which creates a retention problem for you. So, I think what's going to happen is, the continuous evaluation of your compensation structure. Typically employers do it, annually. Well, you may have to do it quarterly in order to keep abreast of the changing marketplace. And then, as you just pointed out, it's going to come to a point where we have created this compensation expectation on the part of many candidates, and they may or may not provide the equivalent value to an employer, and that's going to shake out over time, I think.
I agree. It's going to be really fascinating. Folks, just a reminder, I am talking to Peter Weddle. He's the founder of TA Tech. TA Tech is an association which I get to say I'm a proud new member of, which is wonderful. And one of the many things they do is offer conferences, summits, and they're hosting one in New York City. So if you're in or around the New York City area, you're in recruiting, this is definitely something you don't want to miss. They're going to be talking about leadership when it comes to technology and candidate experience. And then what do you think if who's the ideal, if we talk about the problems they're facing right now, Peter, who's the ideal person or company or org to be attending next week's session?
Well, the whole conference is geared towards trying to create a meaningful dialogue and bi-directional learning between the employers, the recruiters, the talent acquisition and human resource leaders on the one hand, and the technology companies on the other. They both can learn from each other. So what we want to do is it's just a one-day event. It's a very deep dive into this topic. So we only want to ask you to leave all of that day-to-day responsibility that you've got, and we really, we do what the typical HR or talent acquisition conference can't do. We really get down into the nitty gritty. We have case studies. We have fireside chats with VPs of talent acquisition. We have a panel of best practices. We've put together, I think, a really world-class faculty, and we're just going to go at it like crazy for a single day. And I hope the goal here is to really send people home with not just a better understanding of how technology can transform that candidate experience into a competitive advantage, but also some actionable ideas, some tips that they can actually take back to their organization and think about implementing.
There's so many reasons that I love that. First of all, I think it's been so long since people have gone to in-person conferences. The idea of just getting back in person is exciting. And as someone who runs a career coaching company, I know how important it is for people to get diverse points of view and just get out of their day-to-day and sit and listen to some of these ideas and take them in. So I love it. And I love that you keep it to a day so people, aren't gone for too long. I think for some people, these really long conferences are just not realistic to go to. So it's wonderful. So I hope people check it out. I've been putting the link here in the chat. Please check it out. We do have an interesting question from April. April wants to know, are job boards still relevant for skilled hires? Interesting. What do you think?
I'm not sure I fully understand the distinction that you're making, April, when you say skilled hires. I mean, job boards, there was a survey just done by Aspect 43, which is one of the leading industry analysts in the recruiting space. And she did a survey of many employers today, and their number one go-to-market methodology, if you will, is to use job boards. So they're using them not only for volume hiring, so hospitality, transportation, even some areas of healthcare, for volume hiring, but also for data scientists and algorithm developers. I mean, very skilled positions, pediatric nurses. So I think that they work. Are they the silver bullet? Absolutely not. You've got to combine job boards with other technologies in your tech stack. A candidate relationship management platform. I mentioned conversational AI as a way of engaging people early on. A corporate website that really um, helps people to understand what it's like to work in your culture, your organization. The research shows that the number one way to generate a more diverse response to your open positions is to have examples of your employees, the people who would be their peers, telling their story on your corporate website. So there are a host of things you can do, but I would say absolutely boards are still relevant.
So for someone who's joining TA Tech, is there an opportunity to help them figure out and prioritize where they might start their upgrade of their process? Because like you said, I think a lot of people are using job boards. Maybe they're not using them the way they should, or to get more mileage out of them, or maybe they are, but it's time to add to their process, their tech stack. What do you think is the best way for an organization to start to figure that out for themselves?
Well, I think you put your finger on it earlier. It's to talk to your peers and talk to experts in the field. I think dialogue is the solution because nobody has the exact same need, the exact same requirements. So it's really important to sort of be able to probe. Excuse me. I have this particular challenge in my organization. What's the best way to apply this technology? What's the best way to integrate it into my culture, my budget, my recruiting team? In fact, we do, as you know, we don't do just one of these summits. This fall we're actually doing three. Each of them are a one-day event. Each of them are held in an academic environment. So the one coming up in New York City is being held at the Harvard Club. And we have one coming up in October, on October 25th, which is going to be at the University of Chicago in Chicago. And it's going to focus on artificial intelligence in the recruiting process. And then we're coming up to JT's neck of the woods on the 1st of December, and we're going to do another leadership conference, a one-day event at Boston University in Boston. And each of these, again, provides the same kind of experience. Lots of dialogue, lots of crosstalk. And we try to select speakers who will really challenge you, give you a new perspective, and give you information that you can't get any other place.
I love that. I love it. And I will be at the December 1st one at Boston University, where you're going to be talking about recruitment marketing, which folks out, if you're out there, I would love to meet you. So please sign up for the conference. They've got some great early bird rates going on. And you can find that all. If you're clicking this link right now, it's going to take you to the event that's happening next week in New York City, but also it'll bring you to TA Tech's site so that you can peruse around and look at some of the other events that are coming up. Definitely worthwhile to get out and about at a conference. So we've got another question here, and it's kind of coming back to one that was said earlier. One of the LinkedIn users is saying, what are corporations doing right now for targeted positions? What are some of the hot technology they're incorporating in to the process for more targeted positions?
Well, the best way to target your advertising is with programmatic ad buying. It really does send your advertisements, your job postings to the right sites, targeting the right populations. But you also want to make sure that you've written a job posting that has great SEO credentials, if you will, so that it gets seen by the population that you want to see it, because they're searching on terms that are unique to that particular cohort of the population. And I think I think the key challenge here is to make sure that when you're targeting the population, you aren't targeting it in too restrictive a fashion. Historically, a lot of hiring managers want to have college degrees for positions, yet the research shows that in many cases, those degrees aren't required. So you're unnecessarily restricting with your targeting the population that might be interested and capable of doing your job. So I think you want to make sure that you're reviewing your requirements to only focus on those that are absolutely essential.
Peter, you and I were kind of trading emails in advance of this session, and we were talking about the fact that, companies are trying to deal with the fact that everyone wants to be remote right now. They want that flexibility. There's various things that companies are trying to pacify people with in order to get them to come to work, but that's still not going to solve the overall recruiting issue, as you pointed out earlier, right? We still have these bigger recruiting challenges. What do you think? I don't expect there to be a magic bullet, but what do you think is something that just across the board companies aren't doing that they should be doing more of to fix this?
Well, I don't know. I don't have the answer to that. I mean, my crystal ball is no better than anybody else's. I do think that ultimately we're going to end up with a hybrid kind of work situation in many cases, but there will be no universal approach to work the way there was before the pandemic. Everybody's not going to go back to the office and work full time, and not everybody's going to be hybrid. There will be some who will go back to the office full time. I think the majority of the workforce will be in a hybrid situation, and there will be some people who can work fully remote. And as unsatisfying as that answer feels, I just think that's the way it's going to come out.
Yeah. It's so interesting. I always said as soon as the pandemic hit, I would tell people the bigger the disruption, the bigger the innovation. And I would say that over and over. And I said, you just wait. Out of this pandemic and post-pandemic are going to come ideas and technologies that people have just never seen before, right? You think about the fact that people were balking at being on video and then were forced to do it for 2 years. And now everyone's completely comfortable being on video, right?
Right. Yeah,
Things like that.
absolutely. So I do think, but I do worry because I do think there is something to serendipity, the casual conversation between a couple of people in an office that can spark some sort of innovation, some kind of new way of thinking. And I don't know that we've yet been able to capture that magic virtually. Maybe we will eventually as we get more comfortable with digital platforms. But right now, I think it's really something that companies have to worry about, is how do we, I know they worry about culture and maintaining the culture of the organization, but I think equally as important is making sure that they're as creative and innovative as they're going to need to be in the global marketplace.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And, I would just say that kind of leads back as we kind of wind up for today, folks. If you have been paying attention, I have been talking to Peter Weddle, and he is the founder of TA Tech, and his company is going to be doing a summit next week in New York City. I've put the link in there a couple times. I'll do it again. But, what you just said resonates for me, which is the way people are going to spark again their imagination, their innovation is by coming together. And so if we're going to have these hybrid or fully remote work environments, I actually think events like you're hosting are going to be the thing that people will need to go to more frequently in order to have those isolated moments where they can, ideate and come together and brainstorm and start to have these visions of what could happen. I really do. So, maybe the solution is you just have a lot more of events. Why don't you how about we just start doing them every month? What do you think?
Well, we'll get right on that.
Not to throw more work your way, Peter, but I do think that's where we're headed. People are going to want to have more experiences and come together. So, if you're in recruiting, HR, talent acquisition, folks, you really should become part of TA Tech. I'm already blown away with the membership and what I'm seeing. And please come visit me December 1st when we're down there in Boston, as well as some of the other events. It's been great. But I've loved chatting about this. And I know we only have 30 minutes and we've got a minute left. So I'm going to throw it back to you and say, if there's one piece of advice or something you want people to take away today about all of this, what should it be?
Well, I think I would echo your comment that the key to leading a successful career as an individual, the key to excelling at your job and helping your employer meet its mission, I think, is being situationally aware, being at the cutting edge with new ideas, new information. And yes, some of that will be technology, but some of it will be strategy and tactics. And I think, as you were saying, that making the most out of the time you spend away from, whether it's a home office or a regular office, can really do a lot of good for you individually and for your employer. We're a trade association, so our members are companies like JT's, but we've also just launched a professional membership for individuals, so you can actually advance your own professional career as an HR person or a talent acquisition person by becoming a TA Tech professional member. There's absolutely no charge. And what we try to do is to keep you at the cutting edge of technology, so that when your organization needs an expert to help them take the next step with regard to talent technology, you're the person who's able to help them make that happen.
I love it. All right. Well, I posted the link one more time, folks. So head on over to TA Tech. And I did not know that you had this free professional membership. That is phenomenal. Peter, thank you. I think we should do this again, because obviously we only talked about tech today, but there's so many aspects of recruiting and, just, I don't know, all of it when it comes to talent acquisition that we could talk about. So how about you come back again? Does that sound good?
I would love to do it. And thank you for having me today. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. And thank you everyone for hopping on today. Next time, come back. If you've got ideas, questions, comments, you know where to find me. Hit me up here on LinkedIn so that we can help you with what you need, okay? All right, everybody, until next time, what do I always tell you? If you want to win, you got to work it daily. So go get them.